All right, welcome everybody. It is the third Wednesday of the month. That means it's time for Kubernetes Office Hours, the monthly live stream where we go on the internet with a bunch of esteemed panel of Kubernetes experts and we try to answer as many Kubernetes questions for you as we can. Before we get started, let's do some intros. Let's go Jeff, Pierre, Chris, and Samel Drama. Is that everyone? Yes.
I think so.
Introduce yourselves. You've done this before.
Wait, have I? Hi, my name is Jeffrey Sika. I am a software engineer at Red Hat. I do Kubernetes and OpenShift things. But Kubernetes wise, I have a lot of knowledge in the dashboard. I've done a bunch with Batch. I kind of have just general knowledge all over. So that's me.
I'm up. So I'm Chris. I'm a Kubernetes administrator. I'm a CKA as well as I have the CKAD. So if anyone has questions on that process, I'm happy to help there. Otherwise, I'm a bit of a Kubernetes generalist. My admin work takes me into many weird corners of the universe. So bit of a jack of all trades. Happy to answer as much as I can.
Woo.
Hi, I'm Pierre. I'm a software architect working for Spectrum. Basically, knowledge is in bringing applications onto Kubernetes and also administrating and running Kubernetes on Azure mostly.
Hey guys, this is Vamshi Samudrala, working for American Airlines as system administrator and DevOps engineer, and having Kubernetes experience for 3 or 4 years or so, and pretty much can help you on administration things.
And that leaves me. My name is George Castro. I work at VMware as one of the many Kubernetes community managers, and I am really glad to be here. All right, so here's how it works. First of all, if you have a question about Kubernetes, go ahead and start typing it up in the Slack channel. If you're joining us from YouTube, check out the link below for information on how to join the Kubernetes Slack channel. It's an invite thing where you got to click and you get an email, that sort of thing. So before we get started, though, let's get the house rules in effect. So first of all, this is a Kubernetes event, so the code of conduct is in effect. So please be excellent to each other. We like to welcome all skill levels to this event, so there's no new, you should feel welcome, even if you have no idea what you're doing, like me. So while we go over the rules, please introduce yourself in the channel. Let us know where you're from. We like to have like a nice buzzing chat during the show. We actually have it here on the sidebar. Is it here? There it goes. We have it here on the sidebar so people watch it in the stream. So you can help us out there. And like I said, this is a judgment-free zone. So while we will do our best to answer all as many Kubernetes questions today, the panel doesn't have access to your cluster. So live debugging and things like that is going to be like off topic. So sorry. It's like impossible to SSH into people's clusters and do stuff anyway. So panelists, you're encouraged to expand on your answers with your experiences and your pro tips and your expertise. Audience, you can help us out by pasting URLs to the official docs, blogs, or anything that might be relevant to the topic at hand. Every single time we've done one of these, and we have audience participation and we start talking about tools or a certain part of the project and things to work with, things like that, we always find a new tool that we hadn't heard of before. So that's always useful. So feel free to stick as many URLs and references in the chat as possible. And then at the end of the show, in the forum thread, I publish all of the URLs as kind of show notes. So we have that for future use. So feel free to start posting your questions in the Slack. Try to preface it with a Q or question in bold, something that makes it easy for us to do. What we do is we copy those into a little document, and then I read off of that, and then we go. And then what we will do is we will give out 2 Kubernetes t-shirts at the end if we've read your question on the air, and then we have a lot of fun. If you see someone really awesome in the audience helping out and things like that, let me know. I like to give out the occasional t-shirt for those that go above and beyond. So, and lastly, we're DevOps people too. So we like to measure our metrics to see how we're doing. So subscribe, like, do all that good stuff so we can see what users need from the project so we can like help tailor stuff for you. And as always, this panel is all volunteers. A great way to get started contributing to the project is just hanging out and helping to answer questions. And it's a lot of fun, and I give you special swag and stuff. and it is awesome. And lastly, we'd like to thank the following companies for supporting the community with these developer volunteers: Giant Swarm, StockX, Pivotal, who doesn't exist anymore. 1 second. Pusher.com, Weaveworks, VMware, the University of Michigan, Red Hat, Spectrum.io, American Airlines, and Utility Warehouse. Fortunately, Pav is on holiday somewhere warm, I hope. So he will not be joining us today. All right. Is everybody ready? How do we sound there, audience? Looks like people are typing questions. Keep them coming. That's awesome. All right. The first question comes from Amir. This is a long one, so stand by here, panel. My query is about how to achieve connectivity across Kubernetes clusters in a cloud. My understanding is that K8s out of the box doesn't provide very good solutions for cross-cluster connectivity, at least not as the scenario below requires. Okay, and then they give us a little information about their scenario here. So our product is a cloud deployment of multiple services deployed across multiple clusters. Let's say there are 2 services, G for generator. Our product is a cloud deployment of multiple services deployed across multiple Kubernetes clusters. Wait, this question is so long. I'm reading the. All right. Typically, single instance of G is deployed on one cluster and multiple instances of Cs are deployed on other clusters. All Cs need to communicate to G. Communication is a mix of SCTP and UDP packets. Also, during the startup of the Cs, they're supposed to propagate their own IPs to G so that G can initiate the communication. Another constraint is that the application running inside C pods can only receive packets destined to IPs visible within the pod's net namespace. Now, assuming I could achieve connectivity across clusters using service IPs, G could use service IPs of Cs to start communication. But yet another constraint is that we can't let Kubernetes take over load balancing because each communication stream between C and G is unique. So we can't aggregate all Cs under one service endpoint. So question is, what possible option do I have? I could obviously set up one service port per C pod, but there are other better options. I've glanced at Submariner, but have not sure if that's the way to go. Okay, from now on, we're starting with a short question every episode. All right.
I have gone cross-eyed.
So we got this question ahead of time here a little bit. So have we put any thought into this one, panel?
So the first thing that I was thinking, like, there's a lot to unpack here.
Mm-hmm.
The first one was cross-cloud communication. Submariner was the first thing that I was going to suggest looking into because that's purpose-built for it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of other stuff that's in there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, another thing that kind of popped into my head was the blog post by Tom Rampelberg from Lickerd about multi-cluster service mirroring. That might be a good look as well.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a lot going on in there. It might take a while for it to sink in.
Yeah.
Haven't done much in the multi-cluster networking. I think Cilium might have a solution as well. So there's a few things out there. Unfortunately, Bob is here for that one.
Let me simplify. This is actually a good simplification. How can one pod communicate to another pod if they're not on the same cluster?
that is what Submariner is for. So I would highly recommend looking at Submariner in depth for that. Otherwise, you are setting up a bunch of service rules and potentially setting up network policies to lock it down.
Okay. Anybody else have opinions on this? But services will aggregate multiple pods.
Yeah, if you have heard about Envoy or Istio,
yeah, and they don't
that
want
can
the
also
load
help.
balancing. Hold on, lots of people are typing.
Yeah, has anyone played around with the linker? The Istio multi-cluster stuff? I wasn't sure if that was out in GA yet.
Yeah, I don't follow multi-cluster as much as I should be. Usually, Bob is the multi-cluster person.
Bob is the multi-cluster person. I do know it's not really GA yet, and there's a lot going on in the space, so it's kind of hard to pinpoint. Okay, so if you really need like a specific pod to talk to a specific pod, that is kind of the opposite of how Kubernetes was built. That being said, it is like you can do weird pod labeling rules to have specific services mapped to a single pod. It's just not ideal. I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, the best I can do actually is tell you where SIG multi-cluster is, because this feels like a very specific, having that have to be unique in each pod. Hold on. Let's see what's happening here. People are pasting links. I'm totally lost with this one. 1 second.
Yeah, way to throw us a curveball in the first
Yeah.
question.
So have a think. Actually, let's do this. If a question gets long and we have to think about it for a while, what we'll do is we'll pause on this for a second, move on to the next one. We'll see if Bob drops by later. I don't think Bob's dropping by today.
Bob is not going to be
Yeah.
on.
So let's see there. And then, like, worst case, the actual SIG for the multi-cluster. I think in your case, with the specific constraints that you have, would be an interesting use case to see if they have a solution for you. So we will and audience, if you have multi-cluster expertise, feel free to chime in. But let's get moving here. That was a big one. We should have split that one up and done it in between other questions. All right, Maxat, welcome, says Kubernetes 1.16.7 kubelet absolutely ignores the --node-labels flag, but in the documentation says that this is okay, and then they put their syntax there. I don't get any error even though at log level 10, but nodes do not get labeled as masters and workers. What is the problem? So I'm going to paste in the text of the question back into the channel so you can see what the actual syntax was. All right, ideas on this one. Let me give the panel a second there.
Just looking at it. I'm assuming you're using kubeadm.
Sorry, I'm updating the HackMD. So
yeah. Any ideas on this one?
Unfortunately, it's been a while since I've touched kubeadm, so I'm a little out of practice on that one.
Anybody else? We're 0 for 2. We were doing so good. We had such a streak going.
Yeah, if it's not throwing any errors, that's the weird part.
I'm trying to find an issue that might be related to it, but I don't come up with anything, to be honest.
Okay. Wow. All right. Well, we're 0 for 2, so we'll keep this one in the queue. We'll try to address it then with the afternoon panel. See if we have any luck there. Waleed, good to see you, asks, I have lots of users whose data are in several NFS volumes. We usually provide them access via AutoFS to reduce maintenance/management overhead. What would be the best way to enable them access to their files data from Kubernetes pods? That is not a host path or local volume, correct? Because I need to access the data, not create. Oh, you need to access the data that's already there, not create new data. Am I confused? Is this how we?
yeah, so there is an NFS like PV that you can set up. This is something that Bob and I did at the university for all of our Jupyter Hub notebooks.
Okay.
So you can absolutely spin up a PV or a persistent volume that points to an already existing NFS volume, and you can spin up multiple versions of that, and then have PVC, like a PVC that points to that specific PV, and then as long as it is read write X, read write many, you can have multiple pods point to that NFS volume.
Right. Okay. So and then the NFS server doesn't really see anything but a bunch of NFS clients.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. That is awesome. I used to work at a university, and I just realized how much that would have saved my entire life. That whole setup there. All right. Well, does that answer your question? Feel free to type in if you have follow-up questions. I know Amir had a follow-up question on why is there a reason why there's so little information about multi-cluster connectivity on the web? Anyone have comments for that? It just feels like a space that is still very difficult problem space. And
so I'll take a stab at that.
yeah.
multi-cluster is an interesting space. Hopefully I am not long-winded in this. The reason why it's an
Yeah,
interesting
30
space.
seconds.
All right, thank you. The reason why it's an interesting space is there are a lot of different unique problems to solve, and people are trying to solve them in a single solution, and that's not actually helpful. SIG Multicluster had this idea of Kubernetes Federation v1, and they're now working on Federation v2, but a lot of large institutions like CERN actually need v1 and prefer v1. On top of all of this, you have large scale companies like Red Hat or Google where having these multi-cluster setups is their differentiator to make money. So that's why multi-cluster is kind of a difficult space to like pin down, because you have lots of different effort, but it's all unique effort.
All right. Awesome. All right. Moving on. Simone, welcome, asks, I've been setting up Samba inside Kubernetes containers. Now, I wanted to ask if anybody has tried or has tips on how to configure Samba as an Active Directory client running inside of Kubernetes. That is a great question.
So this is a question for the question. Does a Samba service require a unique but persistent machine ID to join into Active Directory? Because I was running into this a similar problem with having a pod be a Kerberos server, because anytime the pod would die and spin back up, the machine ID would be different.
Yeah, he says probably it does.
So there are ways around that. If you spin them up as a stateful set, the name will always come up the same, so you can always assume that that machine ID will be the same, but that may be very different from how you're trying to deploy right now.
I remember seeing a bunch of stuff in the last release about Active Directory, so I'm going to look. I cannot find it right now. All right, any other advice there? Yeah, it says so in a nutshell, I'll probably do it by hand by storing the state on PV, configuring each container individually, etc. I would ask SIG Windows first if that is okay. What do you all think?
I would ask SIG Windows and I would definitely look into using like spinning them up via stateful set, just to make sure that, again, certain state is kept, like the names.
Yep. And yeah, sorry. We're just historically not good at Windows questions. And then last time we had someone from Microsoft and they didn't work on Windows, so it didn't really help. But I do have this link here to SIG Windows. They do have a channel on here. I would run Jeff's answer by them, see if that makes sense. And I do remember seeing a lot of Active Directory work in the last few releases, so I am kind of, in particular with Active Directory. So I know there's some work going in that area. So hopefully that will get you at least going in the right direction. Okay, next question comes from Aaron Eaton. Welcome. Says, can anyone recommend any tools to bind AWS security groups directly to pod IPs when using Amazon-VPC-CNI-Kits with EKS? Any opinions here?
Yeah, I wish I had something.
Oh
Unfortunately,
wow,
I haven't dealt
we
with.
are not on a roll today.
I don't use AWS. So.
Boy. Anybody on this one? All right. Okay, so the good news is we'll have plenty of questions for the session in a few hours to kick that off. All right, so sorry about that, Aaron. We will keep you in the queue, and I will mention it again when we run this in the West Coast edition. Cloud Grim asks, "Oh, thank you." Someone says my microphone sounds good. Someone complained about the audio quality, so that was my excuse to buy a new microphone. Cloud Grim asks, "Welcome, Cloud Grim. Hi. So I've had a recent rogue behavior from Tiller. Yes, I'm still using Helm 2. Where after a Helm upgrade of a release, it decides to delete the PV even after referencing the relevant PVC. Does Tiller sometimes behave like this, or is it high time to do Helm 2 to Helm 3 migration? Question for the group: I know Helm 3 just came out, but like,
I don't feel like
there are people still using Helm 2, right? Like,
yeah.
Yes.
yeah, I was gonna
So
say,
For
like,
sure.
don't feel terrible. I mean, the thing is brand new. All right,
let me take this up.
Sure.
So the thing I think with the Helm 2, when you're upgrading to Helm 3, I saw previous some questions regarding this. When you're upgrading it, maybe due to the retain policy that you keep it on the PVC, that might get deleted. The only thing which you might do is uh, do the check the retain policies on your PVC, and or on your resource policy. You can keep it as keep. You can apply an annotation there on your script saying that a helm.sh, the resource policy, is a keep, so that that will not delete the PVC when you upgrade it from Helm 1 or Helm, like the lower version of Helm from 2.x to 2. Something. But in Helm 3, I think it was addressed. But Helm 2, I think that's the thing. If there's any suggestions, go ahead in the panel.
Yeah, you might also want to check the values chart. I've seen a couple Helm charts where they have a flag or something in there that where you toggle that to keep or destroy on recreate or upgrade. Might be it might be a configuration thing as well.
Another thing that came to mind, though, this would be very weird, is if the PV has some sort of owner reference to something else in the chart that is getting removed. This would be so weird and out of place if that PV happens to have an owner reference to something else that's getting deleted. Like, that would be bad, but it's something else to look at.
All right. Any other opinions on this one? For the panel, personally, are any of you using Helm and doing 2 to 3? I know Mario's the Helm. Here's Mario. All right. First question for you, Mario. Introduce yourself, and then
Hold on. That is eerily bizarre that you go, I know Mario, and he just shows up.
Yeah, it's awesome because our Helm expert is here. This is a follow-up question that I'm adding, Mario. I know you're stuffing your face with chips. Introduce yourself, and then let us know if you've decided to move from Helm 2 to 3, and what criteria in your brains you're using to make that decision. Don't forget to introduce yourself.
I am Mario Loria. I am a senior DevOps engineer at StockX in downtown Detroit, Michigan. We are currently all working from home and kind of loving it. And we don't really use a VPN, so it's not an issue. I also am running out of toilet paper, so this is a public call if anyone can help me. We are still on Helm 2.14. We actually can't even use 2.16. That is mainly because we aren't really seeing anything in Helm 3. Well, we haven't sat down and really reviewed it, but we really don't have the time either. We're such a small team, and the needs that we had for deployments, Helm 2 is for the most part done. We've been able to tune it with environment variables, one of those being like Helm timeouts, to kind of wait for deployments to fully finish, so we know that when a circle job runs, that when it actually does turn green, that the deployment did completely finish. So little things like that. Tunables have been pretty well instituted, but no, we have not sat down and looked at it. It's something on our list to do, but that only means that at some point in the next 2 years, we'll take it seriously. So again, remember, we are a much smaller engineering organization, and we're still fighting a lot more fires than we are actually doing more technical debt and things like that. So I want to go to Helm 3, but there's so many other priorities as well. So.
All right, good to know. All right, next question comes from Linux. Keep the questions coming, everybody. And I appreciate everybody finding information about the previous questions to paste in those URLs. That's always useful. Thank you. All right, Linan asks, what's the best option to achieve MTLS for your metrics collection? Currently trying to get Prometheus running in our Istio mesh, but it has been an uphill battle. Our metrics contain sensitive stuff, so MTLS is a requirement. Istio 1.4 and stable/Prometheus operators, what they're using. Thoughts on this?
You're already on the right path going with service mesh type solution. So I think this is like definitely keep trying to make Istio work, because that's the easiest way to get MTLS transport between services.
Yeah, that or Linkerd. So those are the two big ones.
All right, we see several people typing. Any other opinions on this one? Mario gets a silent thumbs up. That's a good way to agree, but not like, be totally responsible. All right, let us know how that goes. IGS, too many HTTP 499 errors through Nginx ingress controller. Any clue how to overcome it? You're muted.
Yeah,
There he is.
generally are you able to hear me?
Put the
Yeah,
mic
we
closer
hear.
to your. There you go.
Yeah.
Closer
Generally,
to
the
your mouth. Speak
499.
closer into it if you can. There you go.
Yeah, generally the 499 errors are due to the connection close. Like if you're something you're trying to make the connection and the connection gets closed, that happens for the 499 errors. But that may be due to any timeouts that you have configured on. For example, if you're on using an Azure load balancer, if you're on Azure and using a standard load balancer for the frontward connections, and if there's a timeout that is being defined there, that timeout can define and that can result in that 499 errors. So there's some timeouts in your connections where before the ingress it reaches or on the ingress. So check for the timeouts most probably.
Yeah, I was going to say your application could also have on a client side, your application contacting Nginx could have a shorter timeout than Nginx itself does. So, and 499 is when the client closes that connection early. So the client's expecting the data, but it hasn't come yet. So it just closes the connection. And that's where Nginx is like, oh, okay, 499. So definitely need to look into the semantics there of those connections.
All right, I see people typing. Any other recommendations here? All right, can everyone hear my kid? Because like daycare's closed, so everyone's home. All right, good. All right, Emmanuel, welcome. Asks, do you have any experience with Gluster as storage backend used with Haketi? I hope I pronounced that right. I configure Gluster and Haketi on my 3 nodes cube cluster, and I'm able to dynamically create persistent volume. What's that? But the thing I saw is that the pods in the cluster that use the Gluster PV, they mount it from only a single machine of the Gluster storage pool. This means there's a bottleneck. Am I doing something wrong? Should I edit something in my Gluster storage class definition? And then they have a follow-up question. A colleague in my company has raised concerns about Gluster FS stability, e.g. risk of losing data if nodes fail. I feel like Gluster has improved greatly in the last years, but I don't have data to back this up. Also, I don't feel that storage alternatives are significantly better. Can you recommend a storage product that can provide distributed replication and is safer? I'm not quite familiar with people running Gluster on Kates. Any opinions there?
I really am not either. I know from experience that Gluster it's relatively reliable, but its performance is where it kind of suffered. I know nothing about running it on Kates. Luckily, we haven't had to really do that, but I've heard that people are doing it with Kates and it should work just fine. And then I know this person was asking about other options. Obviously, there's Rook, which is modified Ceph, which is very promising. That would be the route that I would look at first, because that's probably your best supported, and I mean it's been around for a while as well. So in terms of running storage on Kates, that might be one of yours. There's also vendors like Portworx out there that have made a lot of progress in the reliability and stability of their storage platforms. Obviously, that's for pay, but depending on your needs, that might be something to look into. So,
yeah, and Waleed points out that OpenShift from 3 to 4 moved from Gluster to Ceph, and then he goes, actually, Red Hat uses the Rook/Ceph operator. That's interesting to know. Sammy's mentioned some good tips. Gluster should work fine with Kubernetes. You can use Gluster and Gluster Fuse, which will be a separate Gluster FS cluster and not as a PV or PVC. And goes on to say, just let's see, OpenEBS, and then a link to Longhorn. And Simone just clarifies here, I'm not concerned with running Gluster inside Kates. I'm running it on the host, but I'm using it to provide storage to Kubernetes containers. Well, in that case, it doesn't really matter what you use, right? Right? Looking for Jeff for a nodding approval. We'll see. People are typing.
To provide storage to Kate's containers.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he probably wants that storage to be persistent, is what he's thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, Longhorn as well. Is that the one from Rancher? I forget.
No.
Yes.
Oh, is it?
Okay.
Yeah, Longhorn.
Longhorn
Yeah.
is from Rancher. I'm using
Yep.
it in my home lab. I am
Okay.
extremely pleased with it, but
Nice.
it is also very simple. I can kind of talk a little bit on it if needed.
Yeah, give us a 30-second TLDR because it looks like people are typing in,
All
getting
right,
a bunch of opinions here on storage.
So Longhorn just installs daemon sets across your cluster and then uses whatever storage is on your nodes. You can configure it. You can also do things like label specific disks if you have SSDs that you want to use. So, and you can chop them up. You can specify, what I mean is like you can chop up like disks to be multiple different volumes. It's not like one disk equals one volume. On top of that, you can specify replication across all these different disks. It's not going to do like RAID type replication, but like you can have between 1 and like n number of copies across everything. And you can also back things up to either an NFS volume or an S3 bucket. But if you're doing stuff at your home lab, you might not want to, back up 8 terabytes of data. Personally. Professionally, probably a good idea.
The design sounds great for home lab though, right? You got a bunch of NUCs. They come with one disk.
I
Right?
literally spun it up at like 11 p.m. and I was done by 11:30, configuring everything I wanted and verifying it worked. It was amazing.
Oh, okay. Well, I am stealing that. Let's see what the audience says. Lots of links here.
Yeah, I just dropped the webinar link from last month's office hours that Jeff brought up for Longhorn.
Okay. That would be interesting to look at. All right. Hopefully that gives you a little bit more information there. I don't think we're doing much distributed. We haven't had a lot of storage questions lately. Actually, come to think about it, we were getting lucky. But hopefully that'll give you some links to stuff. Thanks, Sami and Waleed, for your expertise there. Okay. I don't know who wrote this one. Let's find out here. What are the best and reliable practices tools for rollbacks for a Kubernetes cluster managed with IAC? What do we mean by managed with IAC? IAC.
Infrastructure as code.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
but I'm just like,
sorry.
is that like Terraform? Whatever. All right.
Yeah,
whatever.
there's lots of different
Yeah,
code
I
that
was
you
like,
can manage
okay,
with,
yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
Good way to hide stuff. All right. So how can we properly roll back changes or even delete resources that are not anymore part of the newest version of whatever your infrastructure code solution is? Not only deployments, but also config map changes, deleting a service, and so on. Grigor, welcome to the show. All right. What do we think about this?
Yeah, I'm thinking that's kind of a Argo Flux territory. I'm just trying to figure out remember how they do cleanup on rollbacks and upgrades. That's not coming to me at the moment.
The one thing that I want clarification on is this rolling back versions of Kubernetes upgrades or deployment upgrades, because that kind of changes things.
sounds like deployment upgrades, but
Yeah, this sounds like they're apps, not their clusters.
are we
Grigor,
talking
if you're listening, if you could just confirm.
Okay, and Chris, I actually am interested in this as well. So any articles you can link would be great. Are we talking about, because doesn't Weave have a Flux? Yeah, so Flux is under Weave, right? And then Argo is still its own, or Argo
but
and
they're
Flux
merging.
They're merging.
merged, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
so Flux is under CNCF right now, but Argo and Flux are merging under the GitOps engine project. So that's under hashtag GitOps in the Kate's channel.
Yeah, and they
Gotcha.
confirm not their cluster, just their deployments. Yeah.
Got it.
For me, I'm using just Helm rollbacks, to be honest, and have hooks for migrations and so on. So that's what I'm doing.
And are any of you actually using Argo or Flux right now for this?
Using Flux right now, it's been great. I just can't remember how it's handling the cleanup. So for anyone who doesn't know how Argo or Flux work, basically just they sync with a Git repository, so you can keep your current state of code in a specific branch, and their job is just to make sure that what is deployed in Kubernetes is what's represented in Git. So a rollback would just be commit your new change, or commit the old change, or do it just your Git and push. It's quite fun.
Yeah, that especially with the merge now feels like it's pretty much going to be the de facto default for a lot of people. Anyone else, audience, have opinions about this? All right. Have you seen Argo or Flux yet? And then FC says with Flux, you might need to enable the garbage collection for cleanup to happen, but after that, it'll be pretty straightforward. So it feels like that is a pretty solid answer. Thanks for your input, FC. All right, moving on. Froggy asks, what's the most sensible way to manage, wait, this is the right one. Yeah. Manage secrets. I see lots of discussion around the topic and haven't yet decided on what direction to go, if any at all. I'm currently using mvsubst, which I haven't heard of that, but I know what the two answers are going to be. Panel?
We are currently implementing Vault and liking it for the most part. Sadly, I'm not really on that project, so it's gone a little slower and we haven't actually done it, but it seems fairly reliable. It seems easy to deploy. There's a little bit of, you'll have to learn the HashiCorp world a little bit because you'll need the storage for those keys, and the best option for that is Consul. And they kind of lock you into it, but also Consul is pretty great. So yeah, I definitely look forward to bringing more to the table when we're actually running it live, but there are a lot of things you can do, especially you don't have to actually run the libraries in your application. And I think someone did link here the sidecar model where you can actually have a sidecar that subs in variables and kind of handles it's kind of like a proxy, a client proxy for obtaining the secrets and then providing them to your maybe legacy app or an app you just don't want to have to deal with the libraries in. So that makes it a lot easier. But yeah, we are really excited for when we get there and when we finalize that. So.
Yeah, and we've been looking into Vault at recently. Their Kubernetes implementation has really picked up in the last year. So there's a native installer with Helm chart. You can install Vault agents. So if you want to manage multiple clusters and have a central Vault, you can do that, and it's pretty spiffy.
Yeah, NFC says for secrets, we use a combination of Bitnami sealed secrets, which I dropped a link in the notes, and Vault. And you can use a webhook at something like Vault Env to live subs environments. And then drops a link to a Banzai Cloud's bank vaults. Cool. Froggy says, I've worked with Consul. Good to hear. Figured Vault with Sidecar was likely to be the answer. Thanks for confirming that. I don't like to spread rumors about what people use and don't use, but I'm really feeling this is becoming a really common pattern. Panel, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, even if it's just the case that like there hasn't been something that's better that's really come out. I mean, Vault just seems like a managed service that is meant to be completely reliable, kind of spread, work in a distributed model, and be fairly flexible and obviously secure. And it's balance those all really well. I think even still, even I remember back when it came out in 2016, 2017, it was like, oh, wow, what's that? No one was actually using it. And even still, we're kind of in this like, oh, it's this magical unicorn. But there are some people that are actually using it really successfully. It's going to take effort, and you're going to have to say security is a priority in my organization, and put forth a ton of effort and research and testing and making sure it does what you want it to do, because you also don't want to lose those secrets or screw up your applications or screw up, need someone to be online to at 3 a.m. because things went down and now they're coming back and to unlock the unseal, right? Like, so there's a lot of operational costs as well. So.
Yeah. And they just had a follow-up here. I just wanted to read it for the videos. What is the sensible way of having some environment variables shared by different services? Thinking Vault might be the way to go there and just injecting the same value into different per service secrets. So that makes FC's answer make more sense. Yeah, we just need sidecars to finish and release, and then I think it will be a more common pattern. How about that? But I don't know. I feel like usually it's either Vault or sealed secrets or some combination of both. There usually. All right. Hopefully that answers your question, Froggy, and at least gives you confidence that you chose the right thing. Keep the questions coming. Let's see. Just looking through the links here. We don't have any. I think we just reached the end of the queue, right? Let me just double check.
Yep, it was end of the queue. No more new questions. But
yeah. Okay. So everybody, bringing your new questions. Waleed's dropping a link for Vault that has a Kubernetes CSI driver, which would be useful. And I see people typing. So while we're waiting for questions, 1.18 is getting baked finishing touches. Anyone have a favorite feature that you're looking for?
And going back to the
I think we missed a question by Matt. Yep, continue. Go ahead.
Good.
Yeah. All right. Matt, welcome to the show. Sorry if we missed your question. If we missed your question, please just repeat it again. And also, if you have follow-up information, we are watching the chat while we're typing. So if you have more information about your question, always helps. We've got time, got about 10 and 15 minutes, so keep them coming. So Matt says, I need to introduce 10G networking connections between my storage system and my containers. Adding the configs to the YAML is not a problem, but how do I add the second network into my environment? I'm currently running Metal LB for ingress service on the 1G network. Thoughts here?
So I was just gonna say, I this is definitely a Bob question. I haven't done bare metal and multiple networked interfaces, etc. But yes, iSCSI as well. Interesting. So I think my big thing here is like you're gonna need to, I don't know, probably kubeadm and kind of get everything running on the 10G network. For that to like maybe making that the default is your easiest option. And ensuring that everything is using addresses on those interfaces, right? So it's really a make sure by default I'm using these new interfaces on these hosts to communicate. So I don't know that. I mean, that's going to probably go foundationally to how you set up the cluster, et cetera. I don't know what that looks like doing it after the fact, right? After you have a cluster up and just installing the interfaces, and then you're not going to get magic, I don't think. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of research there.
A strong opinion on this.
Yeah, and I'm going to let Jeff talk, because I'm sure Jeff might even have a better idea. But yeah, it might be tricky.
You're muted, Jeff.
Hey, helps when I double mute myself. It's like double natting, only worse. So I do have strong opinions. It's just I need a couple questions answered first. The first thing is, I'm assuming this is bare metal. So yes or no. The second thing is, are you managing the entire life cycle of the hosts? Like, how are you provisioning the hosts? Because I honestly, the best, what we have done in the past, this is not a Kubernetes solution. This is a host solution. You're going to more or less specify the route for all the traffic to use that 10G interface. And then like when you install Kubernetes, you just have it use the 1G for all of your ingress. But 10G is specific to your storage. We've done that before. So this, so the long story short is, this is actually like you're going to have to change like routing tables on your host, not within Kubernetes. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Bob would answer this so much more eloquently, but that's what it gets down to.
Yeah, that's what Mario meant by the magic thing.
Well, yeah, and I was even saying if he just wanted to use 10G, like do away with the 1G and just use 10G for everything. But yeah, that's also the cases where he does a split or 1G for everything that isn't storage, right? But it depends on what his goals are. So
yeah, it says, so in the past I had the target LUN and IQN to the YAML.
Right. So you would still do that, but what I'm suggesting is at the host level, you need to specify that any traffic that is going to target the network the LUNs are on goes through that 10G.
And should my container be able to see the physical interface on the worker?
No, I don't think so. Maybe I'm wrong. Again, this is more of a Bob question. Why does Bob get all the good questions when he's gone?
He picks a one time, he doesn't show up. Well, can a container normally see the
If he means
device
worker,
on
he
a
means the
node host?
host. So he's just asking, can the container see the physical interface
Yeah,
on
like
the
does
node?
container
Which,
know I have two networks?
right, which
Yeah.
the answer should be yes if configured right, but that's a vastly different question than will my container be able to use that interface, or will its traffic flow through it, right? So, and that's where the routing comes in that Jeff was talking about. So
Yeah, so you said something about configuring the routes correctly.
So I would love to hear more from like his experience doing this, and I'm guessing I'm going to suggest, Matt, that you go to Safe Storage and talk with those storage nerds there. You've probably expended what knowledge we have here.
Yeah.
But I would love to kind of hear the feedback from that as well. What that looks like, if there's like a little guide out there for how to handle that. So
he means SIG storage. Hold on, I'll get you the link. And they have a channel on the Slack as well, that should at least get you people that know more about storage than we do. So sorry, that's the best we can do today. It is not a good day for our success rate. Anyone have any other questions? We're about to start wrapping it up here. So let's see. So we have a few that we weren't able to answer today. Let me go through. The first is the multi-cluster question.
To the multi-cluster, they had so many other responses, and there are so many links which have posted.
So hopefully that will get you going in the right one. Here's one. Maxat's question we weren't able to answer is the kubelet absolutely ignoring the node labels flag. And
Joel, there's a thread that Joel actually was responding on that he figured out he solved that problem. Basically, the labels that kubelet observes are different in 116 from like the older generations. So I'm actually using an invalid label for our clusters, but we're on 114. It still accepts like a no dash role or something, and that's actually invalid in 116. So, but there's a thread that he posted a little bit further up that people should be able to find decently easily, and I'll post a link to that here fresh, so people can find it.
Hold on, looks like Maxat is typing as well. Please read the thread. Oh no, is there? Oh, he's not fixed yet. He's not fixed yet. It looks like they're still in progress. Mario, do you want to hop into that one and see what's going on? Oh, he tried Joel's solution. It did not work.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, so that one is still open. So we'll keep that one open for the next session. So we're gonna have a session in about 3 hours after this. So we'll be able to do that. The Samba question was okay-ish. I think we got something there. How to configure Samba as an Active Directory client running inside Kubernetes. This one we weren't able to do. The AWS security groups one. Have you seen this one? I know Mario's new since we asked this one. Can anyone recommend any tools to bind AWS security groups directly to pod IPs when using Amazon VPC CNI K8s with EKS? Let me see.
Ooh, I don't think that's possible. I mean, technically, if you're using the AWS CNI, which you are because you're an EKS, you're all VPC, right, for all of your containers. But I don't think you can actually like bind security groups right to those individual containers. So that's a really good question. I would open up an AWS support ticket and ask, because they actually have some pretty good support around the EKS things and what you can do. VPC wise, especially when it comes to CNI. They've had a lot of issues with it in the past. So we've got some pretty good responses from them as well and suggestions. So they might have some new service that you can run to do something like that, but I don't think so. Now, what you can do is there's with EKS CTL, you've got security groups that were made around your hosts. So you could, for those hosts, put something in place and tune those to your liking. But I don't think you can do it kind of per container sort of thing.
Yeah, and Aaron's still around. Thanks for sticking around. Aaron says that AWS says a feature request being developed for the next release of EKS. So that's good to know.
There you go. Yep.
That's handy. Thanks for sharing that. That's always useful. Okay. And with that, I think we have time for anybody have a nagging question? Last chance. Give us a chance to increase our success ratio today. Anybody can someone ask me what a pod is so I can get a 1-for-1? Jeff, I need you to roll a die for the. Okay, so here's what's gonna happen. If you asked a question today, we've put you in the raffle to give you 2 Kubernetes t-shirts. So we're gonna pick 2 people randomly. So Jeff, you're gonna roll a 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
I counted 13.
13. Yes, you're correct. Please roll a 2. Please roll a 13-sided dice twice.
I have done so. Now I need to recount and figure out who number 8 and number 9 are.
Oh.
1, 2.
Oh, that's interesting. He says there's also an enterprise offering called Tigera.
IG and Emmanuel.
Okay, so IG and Emmanuel, you have 1 t-shirts. I will PM you. Hold on, but Aaron said we're doing a demo later, but don't know if our needs are needs yet. That'd be interesting to know. So Tigera is the company though, right?
Yeah, Tigera is official enterprise Calico.
It's Okay,
Calico.
so it's so enterprise Calico has the feature then. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Stand by. So IG and Emmanuel, there were 2 manuals, right? One had double M's. I might be mixed up with someone else. So I will PM you and get you a t-shirt as always. Thanks everyone for listening. We will be going live again in about 3 hours. And so if you have more questions, we'll have a totally separate panel. So fresh set of eyes to look at our problems. But please do stick around in the chat and continue to help each other. We always like to see that. With that panel, anyone have any last minute stuff? Stick around after we're done broadcasting.
You said there was sorry, I have a quick thing on the Samba question from before.
Sure.
They were trying to do Active Directory, which is way beyond what I have really ever done. But I do have a Docker container I made a few years ago, actually for my Raspberry Pi, that just is a simple Samba share. So you just feed it in a directory that you want to share, you host map it, and then it shares out as standard Samba share to your general network, and you can hop in with your Windows machines and all that jazz. So if that person is interested, just ping me. But I mean, that's far beyond. I mean, you could run in Kate's, no problem. Depending. Yeah. So
sweet. I see Emmanuel's typing, so I will ping you to give you that t-shirt. And thanks everybody. We will be back in a few hours. Stick around, panel. Thanks.